Welcome back to another episode of Beyond the Brief. Today, we're very, very fortunate to have Jocelyn Sexton here. Jocelyn is the VP of Marketing with Growth Acceleration Partners. Jocelyn, thank you so much for being here.
Of course, Chris. Happy to be here.
To get us started, why don't you do a deep dive on where you started in the industry? You can go clear back to university or whatever you'd like, whatever feels best for you, and then lead up to today and what you're up to now.
Okay. So I'm currently, as you said, VP of Marketing at Growth Acceleration Partners. It's a consulting and technology services company. I've been in B2B technology for about 11 years now, but I started with a journalism degree and was focused on PR and communications. And so I spent the first 4 years of my career doing marketing and communications for electric companies, moved to Austin, Texas, and spent 7 years doing state government, and then decided to go back to school and had gotten into UT Austin into their advertising program and decided sometime in between when I was admitted and when school started that I think I wanted to, you know, be a leader, be a people manager. And I ended up switching and getting miraculously into their MBA program. And that was a big game changer for me. I got my MBA from UT and went straight into corporate marketing, which was kind of my goal. I wanted to try the corporate environment and worked at some Fortune 500 companies and just have had the best time working in technology, working with engineers, and really just working with really smart people, selling to really smart people, technology, engineering, different things, and just really can't imagine going back. So B2B marketing is kind of my sweet spot now.
I love it. So a very interesting journey. I appreciate you went from I guess journalism originally, right? And
Yes.
then thought you wanted to go into advertising and then pivoted into broader marketing and that's where you've landed and the B2B. Have you how what was the stuff that you did when you were working with government?
So I worked for the ag department. So I worked in Texas government. So worked at the ag department for only about 7 months. Moved to the comptroller's office for 3.5, almost 4 years, and then worked at TxDOT, Department of Transportation. And that was kind of my first little bit of marketing because even though we were doing internal communications, TxDOT has a lot of cool programs like Don't Mess with Texas, and we were promoting new tollways and things that happen. And so it was kind of, even though government is obviously nonprofit, there were things that we needed to market and promote that TxDOT supported. And it kind of led to the natural transition to pure marketing.
That's great. Yeah, I lived in Houston for I don't know 3 years early on in my career, and was very proud to have a "Don't Mess with Texas" sticker. It wasn't on my car because that's a particular thing for me, but it was
It's a
definitely
big deal,
something.
though.
Oh yeah, I mean, what a great like for a an anti-litter campaign. It's a incredibly successful program and one that's definitely written up in a lot of the journals for its impact.
And Texans are so proud. I think most Texans would identify as Texan before they identify as American. But even for me, growing up in a real small town where littering in the 80s was just kind of the way of the world. And now it's just like, what are you doing? Like, pick that up. Like, Texans are very serious about their non-littering and keeping Texas clean. And there's also a program about Texas highways and keeping Texas highways beautiful with wildflowers and not littering. So it's a big deal.
Yeah, for sure. I I've got a son in grad school, and our daughter just finished grad school. And one of the conversations I've been having with them is, because they're um, you know, w- these friends I have, will I stay in touch with them forever?
Uh-huh.
And I think it varies for everybody, but I'm curious because the McCombs program is obviously very, very well regarded. Are you in touch with some of your peers from your time there?
I am. Not as many as I would like to be, just because everybody, has their own thing. When I was in grad school, I was one of the very few women who actually had a baby during grad school. So during my last semester in between midterms, I had my daughter. And luckily I was in my cohort had about 7 doctors in it, so we all kind of had a plan just in case something happened. Um, but that NBA baby is now 11 years old, and we just all have things going on. But there are two very good friends of mine from grad school, and we own a boat together. I like to say that I have half a boat, and they've seen my kids grow up. We've seen them have kids, and their kids grow up, and we get to hang out with them pretty often. And so that's fun. It's always like a little NBA reunion when we're all together.
I love that. As a boat owner, I think you'll appreciate this, and you probably know the answer. You know what boat stands for, right?
Oh, it's gotta be something about throwing money away.
Yeah, about another thousand.
There you go.
Yeah,
Yep.
yeah, yeah. It's definitely true. But I can't imagine not having one, for sure.
It so I was so far removed from boat ownership growing up, and now it's like, they say the happiest day of a boat owner's life is when they buy it and then when they sell it, but I don't know, it's been very fun for us. I'm one of the most unathletic people you'll ever meet, but watching my kids do their thing on wakeboards and wake surfing is so much fun.
Yeah,
So,
no, for sure. I have, I've worked on a couple of water boat brands in my past, and in marketing we refer to it as having the water gene. Right,
uh,
and it's definitely true. There's those that don't, that are landlubbers and happiest on a mountain, or, in the city. But those of us that have the water gene are just, you have to be on the water, in the water, around the water, somehow, some way,
yeah,
for sure. Um, I grew up sailing. I grew up in Michigan. I grew up sailing actually and sailed very competitively as a kid and even in college. And to me, one of the things I've often referred to in talking, to students, like, 'cause I've done college days and guest lecturing and even been an adjunct. One of the things I've talked about sometimes is when you think about strategy, sometimes it's kind of similar to sailing in that you have to read the wind as it crosses the water. And it's really, you can't see it, you can't smell it. You can kind of see the ripples on the water, but sometimes that's too late. So you have to learn to really pay attention to those details. Same thing is true in strategy. So for you, how do you get the inspiration for the strategy, especially like you working in tech, in B2B tech? Oh my God, it's like there's so much of a sea of sameness out there and speeds and feeds, to like bore me to death stuff. Where
yeah.
do you find your strategy? Like, where do you find your insights to propel the work forward?
That's a great question, and I like the analogy of being out on the water and strategy because it's also very similar to being out on the water and having to be agile. Like, you may have a plan, you may have a strategy, but the wind changes or a storm cloud pops up or some idiot on some other boat is doing something and you have to change direction really fast and be able to pivot quickly. For me, strategy is, if I carry the boat reference a little farther, it's about watching what other folks on the water are doing.
Yeah,
Um, Ultimately, my strategy has to be to serve our clients or our prospects, and so being able to meet them where they are, providing the type of information they want, providing the type of solution not only that they want but they need, and just having a really good feel for our industry's challenges or concerns or pain points. And, sometimes there is a lot of sameness. And when I worked at Emerson about 10 years ago, somebody there had told me that marketing is a lot like being a toothpick under a fingernail, that part of your job as a marketer is really like jamming that toothpick in to make people feel the pain. You're not trying to invent problems, but it's all about not so much, what do you get if you do this? Sometimes it's what do you get if you don't do this?
yeah,
Status quo is such a big thing. Like our biggest competitor is status quo. It's not other competitors. And so making sure that we inform people about not just the pains and the challenges they know of and showing the solutions we offer in that regard, but showing them if you don't do this, here's what could happen. You could fall behind. You could maybe not miss the boat, but like AI is happening right now. Are you doing these steps? Is your data in order? Because you can't really do AI if your data's in a bad spot. And so trying to prepare people, inform people, and just being a resource and somebody who's ready to help if and when they're ready. It, it's kind of hard when the focus of your job is demand generation because you want people to buy now. But I do appreciate the long tail of, when you're ready, as you're getting ready, we're here, we can help. And sometimes we can step in earlier than needed or earlier than you think you may need us because we can help you get ready. Um, but yeah, the strategy is just making sure that people are informed and that we, you know, not that we follow what others are doing, but that we have a clear pulse on what people actually need.
Yeah. Yeah, and sometimes the hardest part is that what they need, they don't understand how to express or really
Yeah.
relate, so you have
Yep.
to help them kind of
That's
take
where the
us.
toothpick comes in.
Right, yeah, exactly. Um, one of the so how do you lead score? How do you like, one of the things that's really interesting I find, especially in B2B, is, everybody's got technology that can give them lots of clues, and frankly, m most people want to be, like, clear about where they are and what their receptivity is.
Yep.
But the lead scoring and, like, when, how to move people across the journey, which isn't linear. Some people are ready to do something right now.
Right.
And some people want something small now, but, eventually figure out that this is a trusted partner and you need a lot. But how do you structure that? What are some of the tips and clues you use that you listen to carefully, to the audience to understand their known and unknown pain points?
Yeah. So I mean, it's difficult. Even with the best technology, with the best intent signals, it's still, in my opinion, it's very difficult to tell if people are in a learning mode or if they're in a, preparing to buy mode. I see a lot more people in learning mode right now. Um, so I mean, I feel like we do probably all the same things that most people do, and I don't know that lead scoring has ultimately gotten a lot better from the sales perspective over the year. We can tell you, this person watched our webinar for 45 minutes and they clicked this email and went to this page, and we can see their intent because they did XYZ. At the end of the day, the things that are working for us the best are still some of those in-person conversations. Um, I'm a lover of content. I don't know if it's the journalism background or just being a lifelong storyteller, but some people want to read just to read, and it's the conversations and the interactions and the engagement that you get from that I think is the biggest pulse point. If they are on their journey and you can tell they're kind of clicking certain things, it's the intuitiveness behind that where it's like, okay, do we really think they are wanting to buy? Do we need to send them more to an SDR, or is this suddenly a hot lead and it needs to go to directly to somebody in sales? When I started working at Gap, one of my mentors here, he considered MQLs to be essentially what we called hand raisers, and I argued with him forever because it's like that's an SQL, that's not an MQL, and at the end of the day, like who cares about the acronyms? Like how can you help people as quickly as possible? And if they are truly MQLs, even though they're ready to move forward, maybe marketing still has a part to play in that nurturing and in that education piece. Um, I will say for our business and our industry as a whole, I've never worked at a place that had so many competitors. When I worked at Emerson, when I worked at Dover, when I worked at SailPoint, when I worked at National Instruments, they had a pretty small group of competitors that played in that market. And if you look at technology consulting or technology services or nearshore or offshore, outsourcing, it's mind-boggling how many people kind of play in that space or say they can do those things. And so I think lead scoring and demand generation as a whole is just very difficult. A lot of it is still based on referrals. A lot of it is still based on face-to-face conversations. And so we've actually changed our strategy in the last year to kind of we're still doing the webinars and the email engagement and all those things, but we have a new focus on things that are putting us out in the field, both sales and marketing, to have those conversations, to be part of those discussions, and to kind of reset and hear more directly about what are the challenges, what's going on in the market, how can we help, what would be useful, what do you not want. So sometimes knowing what people don't want is just as important as knowing what they do want.
Yeah, I love that. I mean, the reason we do this podcast is to be a part of the conversation about what's next, not
Yeah.
what was, right? And that's part of the reason we do an episode a week, right? Because the game is changing constantly. And I totally agree with you that it is about storytelling and getting different context out there and continuing the conversation because a couple of points I'll ask, but I'll lead the witness a bit. Tell us a little bit about how you feel about the way the world sees SaaS today.
Well, I mean, we just had a webinar at the end of July, and I think the title was something like, Is SaaS Dead? Like, kind of being a
Yeah.
little provocative with it. And I don't think SaaS is dead, obviously, but it's changing. And if
Sure.
if you are a pure SaaS model, like you've got to be prepared for what how that's going to change and what that may look like. Um, I think that the other thing is I think people are just more and more aware of what SaaS is. They're getting more and more used to that um, model of buying things. Um, I feel like, things like ARR, just people didn't talk about that as much, and people didn't think about software being a service. Software was more of a product. And I think it's become much more, um, like even my mom, I feel like maybe knows what SaaS is, but it's what it's going to look like in the future that companies need to be prepared for, both companies that are selling SaaS, but also companies that are buying SaaS. How do you budget for that? Does your budget need to go up or down depending on what you're buying? I, I think I think it's going to be interesting times for SaaS in the next few years, especially as AI becomes more and more not even prevalent, but just necessary. Like it's
Right.
it's it's a must have. And how does that change everything? How quickly you do things, how you do things, how things are received. I think I'm not smart enough to know what the future looks like, but I think it's going to be very interesting. And I think we will be able to look back in a certain amount of years and be like, whoa, do you remember when we used to do things like that? Do you remember when we used to sell that? I think it'll be very different.
Yeah, we hear a lot of SaaS fatigue. Um, and part of the biggest reason is that a lot of SaaS platforms have to have services as a component of the agreement.
Yeah.
And the whole premise of SaaS was no services needed or very low, white glove or something
Yep.
like that. And so because SaaS became a sexy category, lots of people said they had SaaS and they'd sell it as SaaS, and then you get into it and you realize that it was like Salesforce where, you give a mouse a cookie and and they want to buy your house or they want
Yeah.
you to buy their house. Yeah. So, and, let's go further into AI because I think, you know, even I'll step back to step forward. Crossing the chasm talked about how, technology, it's not what you can do with technology, it's what technology can do for you.
Yep.
And I feel like we're with AI in that same boat, right? It's not what can it do, it's what can it do for you. And a lot of people are struggling with trying to inject it into their use pattern
Yep.
instead of building around its unique strength. How do you guys help companies figure that out and adapt it and adopt it in ways that are intelligent?
So we have one of our newer services is AI workshops. It's AI acceleration workshops, and the purpose of it is meeting people where they are in their AI journey, which sounds very cliche, but it's, you know, some people have a board or a C-suite that's like, you got to do AI. But even very intelligent CTOs sometimes don't know exactly what that means or what it should look like. Does it mean we need to do AI? Do my engineers need to be using AI? Are we putting AI into our product? Like, what does that mean? And so we have a lot of really smart engineers that are able to kind of guide that journey, whether it's, the very beginning stages or moving something from a prototype to something they can commercialize, helping people figure out their roadmap. I think, again, a lot of it begins with a conversation and just understanding, where are you sitting right now? What are you trying to do? What does the end goal look like? And then where do you need help, or where are you kind of struggling? Do you not have the in-house expertise? Do you have too many things that you need to do? Again, is there a data issue? We just went to a event in Coronado a couple weeks ago for um, e-commerce, and a lot of those folks, they need to do things, but their data is not quite ready, and it feels silly almost. I feel like we've been talking about get your data ready for years and years, but it's there's still a lot of issues to get from. It's not from point A to point B, it's from point A to like J, and all those little steps that you need to do in the middle to get ready. So again, we're helping people with all those kind of in between spots if they're looking to validate prototypes and different things that they have. um, Kind of going back to what you said too, like it's about, what you do with that time and what it does for you. I think there are two big challenges that I see in that. One is that people think AI can do everything, and so they're missing the bugs and the QA part that needs to happen to it. Oh, look, I built this beautiful thing. Well, now it doesn't work. Doesn't quite work like I thought it would or like it's supposed to. And you had AI, like why doesn't it work? And still kind of figuring out why and how to fix that. And do you need humans? Do you need some AI use in a different way? And then the other part of it, especially for me and my team as marketers, there are a lot of things that we in marketing can do with AI that used to take us days, weeks,
Mm.
months, doing research for ABM, setting up campaigns, writing content, even, which I have big opinions on how much content should or should not be AI generated. Um, and all that is great, but man, I wish that AI could like do laundry for me and do
Yeah.
dishes for me because I like writing. I like the strategy piece of it. And so now that AI has made so many parts of my job quicker or faster or more efficient or better or all of the above, what am I doing with my time as a marketing leader, as the leader of this organization, to still show the value in what our team does, the value in what I bring to the company, and what am I doing with all that extra time? Because I mean, I'm not sitting around eating chocolate all day. Like I
Right.
have less time instead of more time. And how am I showing, um, not even just efficiency, but how am I showing value? What am I still bringing to the company at a bigger, faster, better level?
Yeah. Yeah. No, I agree. I think there's definitely, I think it varies by person. And part of it's work style, part of it is strengths. And I think one of the things we think a lot about with partners and and AI tool companies, 'cause we have a number of them that we work with, is what's the unique strength of the tool, and then what's the unique strength of the individual, where do their superpowers lie, and
Yeah.
how do you use the technology to give yourself time to do the things that are your superpowers, but not like one of the very interesting conversations I heard recently was how some struggle with the amount of time they get back because their brain can only deal with that level of high intensity
Intensity.
thinking for a short period of time. And they, the fatigue factor of like, now I've got all this time to think about strategy. Oh my God, I'm stressed out about the fact that all I'm doing is thinking about strategy, and I am not necessarily improving the volume or clarity of what I'm getting to. And I think that that's where there's lots of different ways to continue to push that. Observing that as a problem or opportunity gives you a way to then unpack that and say, is it about place for you? Is it about process for you? Do you need a whiteboard? Do you need a journal? Do you need a colleague? Do you need a group? What's your way of freeing that potential? Um, you did a nice job of honoring your friend Cody Gilland,
Oh, yeah.
who wrote a Forbes article around the collapse of the marketing leader. Tell us a little bit about that and uh, how you interpreted that and what your takeaway is around the state of things these days.
So I think that, and I part of me feels that marketers have probably been saying this, forever. There's too many things that I'm supposed to be doing. I have been lucky enough to have variety in my career. I've worked at places where there were very set specific roles. This department does ABM. This department does advertising. This department does events. And it's all very, specialized. And I've worked in places where we do all the things, everything. And at some point, people not in marketing are going to get tired of us saying, this is supposed to be seven people's jobs because it is, but maybe not anymore in 2025 or in 2026. Like again, you have to kind of meet people where they are. And so you have to understand those expectations. But I think to Cody's point and kind of what she talked about in her article was it's still about showing value as a marketing leader. And so we can do we can probably do all the things, but are we going to do them well? Are we going to do them to our best ability? Are we going to do them in a way that moves the needle every time on everything? No, because we are still one person. And so I think it is important to show again what your success is or what you are able to do and move and create, but also what you aren't able to do and what is falling behind because you can't do all the things. And it's showing those trade-offs and those compromises and that level of prioritization that you have to make, but showcasing it in a way that makes sense to the people that are receiving it, whether it's your C-suite or your board or your peers. Because we don't want to come across as whiny and we don't want to come across as inefficient. Um, but I can do a certain amount of things with this budget and with these resources and with this team. What are you looking to get? Because I can't get you demand generation and brand awareness and this and that and this with this budget and with these resources. There is a limit. Like AI did not magically give me an extra $1 million.
Yeah.
Um, and just having those conversations, finding that level of respect. Um, and it's hard. I think sometimes there are times where I don't want to say you have to give up, but you may have to realize like I'm not going to get through to this executive team or to this board or to this peer of mine because they either don't get it, they don't want to get it, or they don't respect it.
Yeah.
And I think respect has to be earned, but it has to be earned in both directions too. Um, and just again, a lot of it goes back to storytelling, being able to tell the story of what you're doing, how you're doing it, what you need, and what won't happen if you don't do certain things.
Yeah. The one of the things we do for the clients we work with is we work with them in creating a visual map. We call it an ecosystem map, and it imagines all those functional departments of the organization internally, but then it has the external kind of connection points. And the reason we do that is it helps the marketing team in explaining to sales or product, merchants, the people that are buying stuff,
Yep.
whatever discipline group, finance, doesn't matter, talent doesn't matter. They have to understand how these things are all connected to because the customers don't look at you as a group of departments. They look at you as a
Yeah.
as a brand and a solution, hopefully. Um, but if there isn't congruence between them, the best marketing in the world won't solve the problem.
Yeah. And
And
you've got to become best friends with like finance because they're the ones that ultimately control a lot of things. And if you can't share again what you need, why you need it, or what you are or not able to do with what you have, it doesn't matter. It's like, well, sorry, here's your budget. Like, okay, cool, but I don't know. I think it's very helpful. I think marketing teams, leaders, people used to have they liked being siloed, and now it's like you've got to play nice and be friends with everybody because it only benefits your department when people
Yeah.
know what and how you do things.
Yeah, we often refer to the internal communication and alignment programs as your first media buy.
Yep.
Because if you get everybody on the same page, at least to the degree that they're willing, right? If at least they're informed, the analogy I use is how many times as we have consumers gone to a retail center to buy something that was on sale and say, I heard this is 20% off, and the person on the other side looks at you like, didn't know that.
Right.
Where do you have did you get something in the mail? Can you show me? Prove it to me. Like, really? Come on. Like, that's the worst experience for consumers. And we experience that all the time.
Yep.
And particularly in B2B, I think, the handoff between marketing and sales can be deadly
Yeah.
if it's not congruent. And, you touched on it earlier. Marketing's job isn't just pre-sale. It's post-sale. I
Yeah.
mean, it's
It's life
honoring.
cycle.
That's right. It's honoring those. In fact, the single most valuable aspect of marketing is social proof, where the people that you work with go, "Man, that was great. They did what they
Right.
said they would do, and it was was fantastic." That's the cleanest, clearest, because that advocacy leads to other people saying, "Yes, that's something I got to try."
Yeah, and it's
Um,
and it's something you have to invest in too. Like I think people, as we are expected to do all the things at one time, like there is value in having people who really focus just on brand and PR. There's value in having people sometimes, depending on your company, that work just with analysts. Like those jobs still have value, and I think my first instinct is to think about it as a leader because I'm, you know, older in my career and looking for certain leadership roles. But I'm also I try to be very mindful of it because I have folks on my team who are, much younger in their career. They're folks in their 20s and they only have a certain number of years of experience. And I can't expect them to do all the things and know all the things. I felt like when I was younger in my career, even if I didn't personally experience it, you saw people who kind of were mentored or had progressions in their career that were very purposeful of, okay, you're going to spend some time doing this and then you're going to spend some time doing this. And it was like it wasn't always straight up, but you got different types of experience or you went really deep in certain areas and you got to be a specialist in a certain part of the marketing engine. And now that's very difficult. I mean, you can see it's sad. I see on LinkedIn every day, friends of mine who are um, internal comms, amazing, amazing people who cannot find a job right now because companies aren't valuing that as much right now. Some companies aren't.
right.
There's some uh, graphic designers and writers who are just amazing, and they're really struggling right now because they went so deep in certain parts of marketing and now everybody wants somebody that's well-rounded and can do all the things, and
Yeah.
that's not a reality for a lot of people.
We're going to have you back for another episode because there's a whole conversation that we're having with lots of folks around the future of work
Yeah.
and the gig economy. And we're big fans of that. In fact, we've built our business model around it because it's just there's so much great talent out there, and the ability to tap into people based on their superpowers versus just like I don't. There's I use the analogy of a hybrid bike. A hybrid bike is capable of going off-road. It's capable of going on-road, but it's not great at either.
Right.
Do you really want a hybrid bike doing your work? I mean, on some stuff, yes, right? Because it is, rinse and repeat. But even then, don't you want people that love what they're doing? And
Yeah.
so, anyway, that's a whole nother episode. What's the best and worst advice you've ever been given in your career?
Oh gosh. um um I would say this is going to sound terrible. um the best advice, or at least the advice that has stuck with me, I'm sure everybody, especially females, have heard about, dress for the role that you want, or different phrases of that advice. The way that I received it, I was 20 years old. I had interviewed for an internship in college and thought the interview had gone well. And I was, walked out into the lobby after the interview. And I think the woman that interviewed me just felt sorry for me, like in a bless your heart kind of way. And I had said something about like, oh, I can't, wait for next steps. And she was just like, oh, honey, you're not going to get this internship. I was just like, oh, okay. Well, can you tell me why? And she was just like, look around this lobby. Um, it was mostly men, and they were all wearing suits. And I mean, honestly, I was probably kind of dressed like this. Like I thought I was dressed nicely, but I had, arms showing, and my hair was not flat ironed. And she was just like, you need a suit, you need closed toed pumps, like heels, and you need to, calm your hair down because my hair does not normally, look this smooth. And I was mortified. And she was just like, you know, go get a job at like Ann Taylor or something. Like you need to invest in a wardrobe for the type of job that you want, because this isn't going to get you where you
Yeah.
want to be. And I'm pretty sure I probably went to my car and sobbed after that. But then immediately, like literally drove to the mall and got a job at Ann Taylor. And it wasn't about, you know, looking like the poor white trash that I probably was, or whatever, but it's about, you have to, at some point you have to kind of play the game, and you have to present yourself in the way that you want to be respected. And I continue to have a hard time with that. I'm not always a big fan of playing the game, and doing the things that I'm being asked to do. But sometimes you got to suck it up, and sometimes you really do just have to smile, even if you're rolling your eyes in the background. Um, was it good advice? I guess TBD, but it has helped me, of just, again, perception is reality. If I am perceived as not serious, if I am perceived as not having executive presence, if I'm perceived as not playing well with sales or engineering or somebody, it's ultimately it's going to hurt me. It's not going to
Yeah.
hurt the other folks. So for me, as a woman, as a leader, as a um, career ambitious person, I have to make sure that the way I'm being perceived is the way I want to be perceived.
Yeah. No, that's interesting. I have empathy for you in that that is both a hard lesson and a valuable lesson, right? It's because there's goodness in it, but it probably was delivered in a pretty crappy way.
Yeah.
Um, you
I wish I
know,
could remember. I wish my brain wasn't the kind that like kind of forgets bad stuff. I wish I could have like remembered her name and then gone back to her years later and be like, "Hey, thank you. You did that, I think, with good intent, even
right.
though it felt really harsh." Um, and it's one of those things like, I work with a lot of men, and so I have to think about that, of just, again, how I want to be perceived, how I want to show up at work, and how I want people to see me. For so many years, I was used to being like, for lack of a better phrase, the little girl. I'm not that young anymore, and so how do I continue to kind of age gracefully into my career where, my peers or my prospects don't have to think so much about things like appearance, but
Yeah.
I do.
Yeah. Yeah, unfortunately, we're all socialized to make those decisions and think about those things, and, I'd like to think the world is perhaps more open-minded, but I also feel like there's less of that in certain ways today than there was even just a few years ago, but, it's a shame. But, if you think of it through the marketer's mind, my motive is to get the job or to be valued.
Yep,
How do I succeed at that?
yep,
Instead of making it personal, right?
right.
That somebody didn't like pink or charcoal, right? That's not that feels personal, right? Versus how, oh, they do like pink. I'm going to wear pink. because
Right.
like I'm going to play offense here, right?
And I
Um,
look good in pink. Like if
right,
you're offended by me wearing pink, then I probably don't want to work for you
right.
anyway.
That's absolutely right. Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah,
I think too, I have um a new boss, and I had told him right when we started working together, the things that are important to me are I like to, you know, do things that I think are valuable, like strategy and making sure execution is very tight and storytelling. But I also like doing things that are perceived as valuable. Like
yeah,
I want the people that I work for, the company that I work for to see the value it is in what I do. So if I think content is very valuable, but my company doesn't, there's gonna be some kind of issue at some point.
yeah.
And so finding that balance, I think, is important. But then also doing what you can do to adjust the balance, because not everything is fixed. Like we always have some, we can always have some play in that or some role to adjust it.
Yep, and I admire the way you put yourself out there as a human on even LinkedIn, right? I saw one of your posts where you were very vulnerable about your growth as a VP
Yeah.
and, acknowledging that you had some shortcomings and some gaps along the way. Because I think so many people are so busy putting their favorite meal or their favorite success point, their favorite, award that, being human, it gets lost. And I so connect with people that are humans rather than just always the manufactured Instagram perfect, version of themselves.
Well, I'm glad you said that. When I was in grad school, I think first semester, we were talking about branding and personal brand, and we had kind of gone through, and it was like, what's the one word that describes you? But I think other people were like assigning us words, like, whatever that may be. And several people had told me that my word was authentic.
Mm,
And 11 years, 13 years ago, I almost kind of took offense to that. I felt like authentic was an adjective. I am authentically what? I'm
yeah,
authentically smart. I'm authentically like, what's the word that authentic is describing? And I came to learn that authenticity looks different for different people, but at the end of the day, and even at the beginning of the day, like I really care a lot about being authentic, about being real. Maybe not so much on Instagram because that really is the highlight reel, but I am who I am, and I am, I'm my daddy's daughter, and I'm always going to be a little, you know, I'm always going to be straightforward. I'm always going to push a little bit when I probably shouldn't. And I don't want to say it's a take it or leave it kind of thing, but people know where they stand with me. There is no amount of Botox that can fix my face when I don't like something or when I'm really excited about something.
mm.
And I think that for the most part, my authenticity I don't think it's hurt me. I think it's helped me be where I want to be.
Yeah, I can't imagine how it wouldn't because it forces others to self-select around you, right? To
Yeah.
decide, am I in or am I out? And they have to show their authentic self, at least somewhat,
Yep.
to connect with you. I'm a big fan of that. So awesome,
Thank
well
you.
done. Um, as we look to the future, I love the name of the company, Growth Acceleration Partners, because it talks about the single most important thing that everybody should be caring about, right? Which is growth.
Right.
We're a growth marketing agency. Same reason. It's like simple. Like let's say, what are we here to do? Growth, right? We're not here to take money. We're here to help you grow.
Right.
What's coming up for Gap that you want to make sure our listeners hear?
So I mean, there's lots of things coming up. We have some really cool industry specific webinars, but I think the big thing that we started this year that we will continue in 26 is you're going to see us more. Like we're going to be at industry events. Um, uh, Growth Acceleration Partners is a funny name because it is so so long. As a marketer, as a brand person, it's just like, oh gosh. So we tend to say Gap, and then that creates confusion because people think, I sell cute clothes and
Right?
jeans.
Khakis.
Exactly. But I think the biggest thing is just more conversations. We're going to be at more events. We're going to be at big events like Dreamforce and Gartner and Forrester events, but we're also going to be at smaller industry specific events or smaller events specifically for our ICP, which is CTOs and VPs of engineering. And again, there's so many competitors. So I just want to make sure people know either the Growth Acceleration Partners or the GAP name. And when they see that, they're like, ah, those folks know, they know what to do. They can help us with AI. They have really smart people, both in the US and LATAM, that can do custom software, data engineering, modernization products, and just making sure that we're out and about and having good conversations.
I love it. Jocelyn, you've been really gracious in sharing so much. Um, as a way to get a further glimpse into your personality, Hollywood just called and they're going to
Uh-oh.
do a biopic on you. What's the name of the film, or who's going to play you, or what's the plot or theme?
Okay. Well, and I'm being way too nice to myself, but I mean, I feel like Reese Witherspoon should play me. We're about
Nice.
the same age. You know, we got the same hair color. We both like pink. Um, if this is going to sound cheesy and it probably takes a little bit of explanation, but my dad used to always say that he loved me plum. And I remember going to summer camp and he would like sign letters like that. And my best friend would be like, "Oh, I love you too, apple or cherry." And I'm just like, no, 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 it's not the fruit. It's talking about like a cup of water being plumb full to the top.
Hmm.
And maybe it's a country saying or something, but saying that you love something plum is like, you know, doing it full. And I think that I've had a life full of fullness. It's way better than what I imagined when I was a little girl. I have the best husband, the cutest kids, like my career is great. And I think just having that kind of optimistic, open, happy mindset has done a lot for me. So it's plum full.
I feel like that's going to be more than one film. I feel like there might have to be a series because there's a lot of richness in there. That's awesome. Thanks for sharing that. So, for the listeners that want to connect with you and reach out, what's the best way to find you?
So I'm on LinkedIn, and luckily my name is fairly unique. So I think when you go to LinkedIn, I think I'm the only Jocelyn Sexton on LinkedIn. And then if you want to visit our company website, growthaccelerationpartners.com, or you could just do wearegap.com.
Nice, nice. That's a great vanity URL. I love that.
It
Jocelyn,
is, unless you look at it really fast, and then sometimes it can almost look like it says wear gap, like wear gap clothes. So I try to do like the capital we, the capital R, and then gap. We are gap.
that's funny. That's so funny. It's always a challenge, right? Naming is one of the biggest, and all that stuff is like URLs is like such. That's why pharma is like, you know,
Let's throw some letters out there and see.
exactly, and see what how would we say that again? Oh my
Exactly.
gosh. Jocelyn, thank you so much for the time with you today. It's been absolutely a joy. I know our listeners are going to enjoy it. And with that, we'll wrap up another episode of Beyond the Brief.
Thank you so much.